الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Mashallah, that's good. That's good. I'm glad I got that response because I was going to say, come on guys, if I've got the heart and energy, then surely you can raise your voices together and be louder than mine. Well, I didn't have to say that, you see, because you did that, alhamdulillah, but I felt like saying that anyway. So we started a few days ago trying to address the concern that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises when He tells us that we are not grateful enough for the favors that He has bestowed upon us. We started off in the clouds, if you remember, a few days ago, and then we returned to our body. We looked at the voice, its purpose, how we communicate. From there we ended up in the brain and its function, and then we trickled down to the heart, and there we are. So where do we fly next? Well, we're going to go intergalactic now, so we're going to fly out into the sky, into the stratosphere, beyond the clouds, and into space. When we look out at the sky, there are two things which dominate the sky. In the daytime, the sun, and in the nighttime, the moon. And in fact, the moon, even though it may dominate, is a very confusing celestial body, because we always struggle to find it, or we see it when we shouldn't see it, and all the rest of it. Well, I guess that's for another day. We'll discuss that on Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, as to whether the hilal is something that can be observed, that can't be observed, or can't be observed. So the two celestial bodies we will look at, one is the moon, one is the sun. And there's one thing which immediately should spring to mind, one thing which immediately should make us be in awe and in absolute, beyond comprehension. The one thing when we see is when an eclipse takes place, that is one of the most remarkable things that we see. And I'll tell you why. Because a full eclipse will mean that the moon is exactly the same size as the sun. When a total eclipse happens, the moon covers the sun completely. But that's not the remarkable thing. The remarkable thing is the sun is 400 times further away from the earth than the moon is. But also the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, so therefore it fits exactly the same size. I'm sure people will tell you that came about by chance. I'm sure people will tell you that this was just coincidence. It so happened. Even when the experts are asked the question of how did the moon come about, what is the moon, the best explanation they can give, because they don't have an explanation, is that something really big hit the earth, and this is the debris from the earth. Okay? Then why is it a perfect sphere? Why do we not see a huge crater on the earth? And why did this debris only go a certain distance and then decide to stop? Okay, I'm far enough from the earth now because I need to work out how far I am between me and the sun. So I better not go too far, because then obviously I won't block out the sun. All these potential coincidences happen in order for this to work. But what about the sun? What is the purpose of the sun? What is its ni'mah that we're not truly appreciating? Well, imagine that the sun ceases to exist. Tomorrow morning the sun doesn't rise. Okay, there is no sun. The time it takes for light to travel from the sun to us is approximately 8 minutes. So we wouldn't know for the first 8 minutes anyway. After 8 minutes we'd realize that the sun has disappeared. We'd go pretty dark very quickly. Okay, there'd be no light. Then what we'd start to see is that, and this is what people don't realize, is in a way, and this again is a remarkable nature, it's like when you get, a ball on the end of a rope or something, and you're sort of spinning it round and round and round and round and round, then imagine your arm is the sun. So what it's doing is it's keeping the earth in orbit around it. When the sun no longer exists, then let go. The earth will hurtle off into space. So the sun is also, because we don't look at it that side, we just think of the heat the sun gives. The sun is also keeping the earth next to it. And these type of things, these energies that we speak of, we can't describe. That what is it? What is the cause? Why is it the earth is held? So they say, oh yeah, because it's the pull of the sun. The sun attracts, because it's a bigger mass, it attracts the earth. Okay, that makes sense. Then why doesn't the sun attract the earth so that it falls into the sun? Why does it only attract it a certain amount and then say, oh, I think that's near enough now, I'll stop attracting it? How does it decide that? What is the other force that's pushing the earth away? So all these questions we ask, when you look at the temperature of the sun, the temperature reaches to, where did I get it? So it's written somewhere here. Oh, come to me. It was hot, let's put it that way. Yeah, it's very hot. It's exceptionally hot. But I'll give you the exact heat when I find it. Well, that another point is that the sun is the most perfect sphere in the solar system. What I mean by the most perfect sphere, that there's only about 10 kilometers difference from that as a sphere in terms of bulging out. For the sun to be such a perfect sphere when it is made nothing of gases is again phenomenal. All these characteristics that it has, there you go. The temperature inside the sun reaches 15 million degrees Celsius. That's hot. As I said, it was hot. You see, you should have just gone by the hot bit. That's why when people say, if Jahannam is made of fire, right? If Jahannam is made of fire, then how can fire be at different temperatures? You know, fire is hot. You know, you put your hand on the stove, it's hot. How can Jahannam be hotter? Well, 15 million degrees Celsius is hot enough. And the way Jahannam is described is that heat collapses in on itself because it's kind of burning itself. That's exactly how the sun is. The sun is continuously falling in on itself until eventually it becomes a dwarf where it forms a black hole because the mass is so high. Now, we might say, well, 50 million degrees, that's hot. What if it was 10 million degrees? What if it was 20 million degrees? If there was a change in its heat, then we would either be like Mercury or we would be like Jupiter. Meaning, either we will be so hot, like for example, it gets to 110 degrees Celsius on the moon. And it drops to minus 100 and something. And the reason for that is because it doesn't have any protective layers over the moon. Whereas the earth has got protective layers over it. So it keeps the heat in. The earth is perfectly distanced away from that hot ball. Or in other words, the temperature of the hot ball is perfect for the earth, for it to exist. So now we then recollect, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? Which one of those favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will you deny? And there's a list of others that I could go into in terms of the speed that we get, in terms of how do you produce so much energy? How can so much energy be produced? And it mentions that this is down to the kind of atomic fission, which gets a little bit fancy, but literally like what we get now with nuclear fission. So the nuclear weapons, nuclear power is imitated from how the sun operates, how the sun works. And in terms of its size, around 960,000 Earths would fit inside the sun. So that's the size of the sun. And that is relatively small when you compare it to the other stars in the universe. The moon also has numerous benefits. Without it, we won't have tides, we won't have the way life we have in the oceans. So it's not like we've just got two big things in the sky and they're interesting to see. But their function would mean that there would be no life on the planet Earth if either one of them did not exist. So when we always go out and we take the sun for granted, or we look for the hilal on Wednesday night and we take it for granted, then we have to take that moment out to think that these are also favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. And these are favors that we will also be questioned for on the Day of Judgment. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, which one of these gifts, these ni'mah, these favors that I have given you, that you are in denial. And remember, these favors are perpetual. Yani they're constant. They are there all the time. The sun is there all the time, continuously heating us up. And I mentioned as well, the way the earth spins on its orbit will ensure that we don't overheat, and also ensure that we don't freeze. So the temperature is shared across the whole globe. Whereas when we look at the moon, we always look at the same face of the moon. There's one face of the moon that we don't see because of the way the moon spins round. Well, some of us, we don't see the moon at all. And obviously some of us see it when it's not even there. But again, we'll wait for that on Sunday, inshallah, as to which moon there is and how many moons there actually are in the sky. Because the rumor has it there may be a couple. Okay, or even more. And we'll also look into whether it's made of cheese. That's just for the young one up there. Whether the moon is made of cheese. But joking aside, these ni'mats that inshallah we will continue to mention over the remaining few days left now of Ramadan, these are the ones which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed for us, not just to be in awe, not just to be in shock, not just to ignore, but to recognize these gifts and favors and to express our gratitude for them. And the way we express our gratitude is we worship the creator of them. Because if this is the created, because we can only truly understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to create by looking at his creation. We cannot, we don't have capacity to try to understand the creator. That would be like, the Musalla trying to understand me. So we cannot understand the creator. The only way we can appreciate the capacity and the skills of the creator is what he creates. And when you have something which is whatever million temperature it was that I read out to you, and yet it does not burn itself, that's shocking. It's at such a high temperature and it does not burn itself out. According to physicists, they say that the sun will last for, Allahu A'lam, 4.5 billion years. That's a long time. And then it mentions that the earth will be swallowed up eventually by the sun. And this is something similar we hear in tradition about the sun will come close to the earth, and then obviously people will be brought to task. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all that appreciation in life, that we don't take things for granted. And whenever we see the creation of Allah and this magnificence that exists, then that's why when we see the eclipse taking place, the Messenger of Allah, what would he do? He would go to the masjid to pray. That was his way of expressing gratitude. He recognized the majesty of what he had just seen. Similarly, where we can, whilst I'm talking about eclipses, and shows the honesty and the truthfulness of the Prophet of Allah, when the eclipse took place, at the very same time his son Ibrahim passed away. This would have been a perfect opportunity to win people over to Islam, to say, look how powerful I am, look how much Allah loves me, that when my son passed away, he blotted the sun out. But because of his honesty and truthfulness, he did not even take advantage of that particular situation. Because his message was always of the truth. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.